Hi, my name is Glenn Murphy. I am one of two presenters of this video series on how to market and harvest your woodlot for profit. My co-presenter is Dr. Reen Visser from the University of Canterbury. In video 8, Reen will look at planning for the harvest of your woodlot.
Timber harvesting and harvesting systems are very complex. They will typically involve 3 or 4 or more machines, and they will typically also involve 4 or 5 or more forestry workers. As such, they tend to be very expensive to run on a day-by-day basis. So even if you have a very nice site, a nice flat forest that is easy to access, your timber harvesting cost may be 30% of the total value of your forest. But certainly if you've got a smaller woodlot that is more on steeper or difficult terrain, it can really add up to 70% of the value of your forest. As such, being engaged in the harvest planning process and making sure the harvest plan is developed well, that it's developed early and that it's developed in detail is the best way to manage the expenses that you have, as well as the expectations that you have from the harvesting of your woodlot. So they should be planned carefully to make sure that they achieve your objectives. Okay. What you should also recognize is engaging with a timber harvesting contractor. Harvesting your woodlot may be a major disruption to your normal farming activity that you have. Okay. So harvesting woodlots, you're not the only person that will be harvesting the woodlots. We're expecting a larger volume of our timber harvest now to come from woodlots. They were typically planted in those early 1990s years. So we're adding about 10 million cubic meters of volume to our overall timber harvest here in New Zealand from now well into the 2020s. And as a landowner, you do have a lot to consider. So one is the economic feasibility of your forest harvest. You'll have wood prices that are moving. You'll be exposed to these very large logging costs, infrastructure, development costs, management fees, trucking costs. Okay, so there's a lot to consider in terms of the economics. I've already mentioned in previous segments about health and safety and the importance to manage that, as well as making sure we are protecting the environment during our operations. The other thing is disruptions to farming. You can also have some property damage. It's very difficult sometimes to maneuver this equipment in and out of a forest without affecting, for example, some fences and or perhaps cutting up your roads. And also, as you can see in that image, the area where processing occurs will typically have a fair amount of soil disturbance that needs to be cleaned up once the operation is complete. So all of these aspects are best managed in a comprehensive harvest plan. What you should also remember though is that the people that come out to do the harvest, or the loggers that specialize in woodlots, are also facing a number of challenges. One of the best ways to get a better understanding of what timber harvesting entails is to jump on, for example, YouTube and watch a number of videos. There's some really neat little videos out there that will help you understand both the process of timber harvesting, as well as give you a little bit of an insight into what that might look like. So for example, here, a gentleman by the name of Gary Leslie from Northern Forest Products has put this little YouTube video together. It's a time-lapse video with some commentary that looks at harvesting a woodlot in New Zealand from beginning to end, so you can really get an appreciation of the operation as well as the changes to the landscape that makes. So planning for harvesting should be done 1 or 2 years before you start harvesting, okay? And that really provides you with ample time to set your objectives and making sure that you can actually engage with a professional forestry consultant so that the harvest of your woodlot actually meets your expectations, finance, safety, environment, as well as those other small details that we have. It also provides you that opportunity to make sure that you get a resource consent if it is required. And again, that can take up to 2 to 3 months with your council. Another really good aspect of getting ready early is that, especially if the finances are available, if you can put your roads in and or tracks in as well as your landings in and get your woodlot harvest ready, what we refer to as harvest ready, that means at any point in time a contractor could turn up and start harvesting. The benefit of that is that, for example, if a really good contractor becomes available, you are ready to go when they are. The other thing is that the timber market in terms of prices can move up and down. And so if the timber prices are high and you have your woodlot available and ready for harvest, that's a real opportunity for the forest management company to jump in there and actually engage in that and get you the best possible financial return on the harvesting of your woodlot. As a landowner, we talk about finance, and we actually completed a survey a few years ago of woodlot owners. And of course, no surprise is that most woodlot owners are looking for the commercial value or a financial return on that investment they've made. But if you actually stop to really think about it, as a woodlot owner, you are probably also very much interested in the aesthetics of it. What does it look like? What does it look like now? What will it look like after harvest? And the other thing is, if you have waterways on your property, of course, you will also wish to make sure that the waterways are protected during harvest. Other things that people have brought up: wildlife habitat, invasive weed management, and recreation, were other values that you as a landowner may have, and you need to be able to communicate those to the forest manager, to the logger, to make sure that those values are respected and managed during the harvesting operation. So, a word from the wise: lots of our woodlots, they're harvested, there is a financial return, but in almost half of all the woodlots that are harvested, either the forest owner, the forester in charge, or the logger will actually be dissatisfied with the job. As a woodlot owner, you can see here are some of those results from a survey. Some of them feel that they didn't earn as much as they expected from the woodlot, and some of them felt that they didn't really receive good safety advice or good environmental advice from the forest manager. So that is an opportunity for them to improve, but it's also an opportunity for you to make sure that you're engaged with them and get that advice, so that afterwards you're not felt disadvantaged in the knowledge that you had. The other things is, while the logging costs and perhaps the management costs are typically up front, you may be surprised at some of those transportation costs and or port costs that can also be added to the bill for getting the harvest done. Okay. With regard to tonnage and as well as merchantable material, it is good to have an understanding. Sometimes the logs that are left behind are not merchantable. They may have some damage. That means they have no value, and there's a cost to the contractor for getting those logs off the site, so they may leave them out there. But if you perceive that to be something that you don't like, you may wish to engage with your logger. Make sure that all of those logs are at least pulled to the landing, but there will be a cost expectation associated with that. Okay. Some of the other things with regard to this equipment is it's large equipment. They may need to take out some fences to get access to that property. So again, it's important for you to ask the logger, do you need to take down some fences? And you may prefer to do that before they come along and do that themselves. Okay. And logging operations are noisy. So if you do have a processing area, for example, near your milking shed, it certainly can disrupt that milking process. Some of the challenges that our contractors do face is that these woodlots typically have small volumes, so they are required to shift more often, and shifting harvesting operations is an expensive part of their operation. So it is also an opportunity for you to work together with some of your neighbouring landowners that may also have some woodlots. If you are able to line up multiple woodlots in one nearby location, it really reduces the cost for the contractor to bring that in, and you will need to pay a smaller share of that relocation costs. So high harvesting costs are certainly exacerbated by tough logging conditions, steep erodible terrain, edge trees, fences. So you do have to realize that a logger will actually have higher costs working in a woodlot than they would have in a larger commercial forests. Okay, lack of infrastructure, making sure you have good road access is really critical for them keeping costs down. And the other thing is, be aware that, I'm sure you wish to have your woodlot harvested when the prices are the highest, but of course the logger is also needing continuous work to make sure that they're able to keep their costs down. So what does a detailed harvest plan involve? A detailed harvest plan typically is both a written plan, so there'll be a written document that sets out things like the objectives and what you may find out on a site, but typically the document or the element that most people interact with is the map, okay, or a series of maps. So the maps really lay out where the roads are going to go, where the landings are going to go. They also may include information around what or how are we going to protect the environment, how are we going to stay away from the waterways. It's also a real opportunity for you to see and understand what type of harvesting systems being proposed for your site, so that you have some knowledge around what sort of equipment is going to come in. And also you will get within a harvest plan a really good idea about how the harvest will progress. Where will they start cutting down the trees? How will they move across the site, so that you have a sense of the timing associated with the harvest as well. If you have a good harvest plan, if you're in a position to put a good harvest plan together, typically together with that forestry professional that will help manage that, you will end up with a really good understanding of what is intended to take place, and as such you are most likely to have the best possible outcome from harvesting woodlot, not just in terms of your finances, but also in terms of safety, as well as in terms of meeting your environmental obligations.
This concludes video 8. In video 9, we will look at harvesting and transportation systems which may be suitable for your woodlot. If you have any questions, please direct these to the email link shown below.